the stomach. See that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So if you just passive range of motion, if I just have Adam relax, okay, and I take, and I just bend, just relax, yeah, just relax. Okay, so I just take him through a passive range of motion. See, I get to here, and you know, I can just feel, oh, okay, that's about it. You know, he's just relaxed. I can just feel, okay, that's about it. What is that? Well, that's the ligaments of the knee. No, that's as far as we go. That's what we do because it's passive. There's no muscular contraction here, but I can still feel the resistance. But see, what we have trained ourselves to think is, oh, okay, so now once that resistance starts, now I really lean into that stretch and I really get that muscle to open up. All you're doing is contracting the muscle. So here's the other sad thing. If I've got a muscle that's tight and I want to get it to relax, get it to lengthen, elongate, and I spend time doing this with the quad, what message am I sending the quad the entire time? Contract, shorten, tighten. Am I helping? I mean, the question I asked Adam years ago, I said, Adam, how long have you been stretching your hamstrings? He says, oh, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years. I said, are they getting any better? No. Why do we keep doing something and there's no fruit from it? And so it doesn't make any sense. So what we need to do now is we need to go through an active range of motion so that the quad, the hip flexor, all that area can actually lengthen, loosen, relax, okay? Without putting the stress on connective tissue, nerves, and the like, all right? So what I'm going to have him do is simply raise his leg from the hip, to do a hip extension as high as he can, and then holding this position, I'm going to have him bend or flex the knee as far as he can. Okay? Now again, look at all that space. Do we really want to compromise the knee joint, the hip joint, when that much space is basically his body's saying, no, I don't need to go that far. This is as far as I go. Okay, and back out and down. So what we have here is true reciprocal inhibition, using it in a therapeutic fashion. So we're going to raise. So we're opening the hip flexor, and now we're going to bend. And so now, even more so, we're bringing the quadricep into play in terms of a true elongation. And he's contracting the hamstring, contracting the glute to do that. Okay? That's good. Come on up. So then, on the flip side, okay, on the flip side, we would bring his knee here. And I would just kind of give him a guide here with my hands, okay? And then he's going to straighten his leg as far as he can. Okay? And I'm just holding this as a guide. I'm not putting any pressure or anything. But, so you can see he's got, you know, just a few degrees here where his hamstrings are still tight. But the point being is his hamstrings are soft. They're able to relax. They're able to lengthen. We're not putting him in a position where the hamstrings are saying, no, no, that's too far. Now, if I were to do this, I do this just a tiny bit, boom, those hamstrings contract right now, the myotatic stretch reflex takes over, and now we're actually contributing to the issue. We're contributing to his tightness. We're making him even tighter because we're forcing a contraction, rather than operating simply through reciprocal inhibition and allowing his body to take him through the range of motion that's proper, and it will allow for the proper relaxation. Okay? So again, here, and you're just going to straighten that leg up as high as you can, contracting the quad, allowing the hamstring to relax. Okay? Very good. All right, what questions do you have?
What about PNF stretching? And trick the stretch reflex to get the muscle to loosen up so you can stretch it farther through range of motion.
Okay. The thing I don't like about that is that we're trying to trick things. See, the problem with stretching, even the concept of having to do it, really, why are we having to stretch? Because we're not training properly. We're not training in a balanced fashion. We're not saying, you know what, I'm going to do chest press, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm working the posterior delt mid-back
to maintain flexibility. See, we have this whole concept that flexibility comes through stretching. Flexibility comes through my ability to flex, okay? So, if you want to talk about stretchability, that's fine, but then let's look at all the components like I've already discussed. But flexibility is your ability to flex. So let's train in a balanced fashion so that we don't really have areas that we even have to approach in a stretching format. And so we're still missing the point that if we would really look at our training principles and how we're going about getting the body ready for activity, stretching then becomes, it's not needed, it's not necessary. I don't do 1 ounce of stretching with my clients, and yet all of my clients will tell you how their flexibility increases. I mean, this is just what happens when you train in a balanced fashion. So we're still, it's kind of like where stuff like that is birthed from, is we realize, oh, okay, yeah, there probably is something wrong with the stretching argument. I can see that. So let's trick the body and let's do this so I can continue to do my stretching. Really? Is that really sound?
Can you explain PNF stretching? Is that what you refer to it as?
Yeah. So basically you have someone stretch through their range of motion, hold it for it's like 10 seconds or something like that. Yeah. Then you have them contract the muscle against you for 5 to 6 seconds and then relax. And then you can push it farther through range of motion. You push them through range of motion.
Okay.
It's supposed to trick the stretch reflex to get the muscle to not contract as you're stretching.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The other thing about that is you're not going to trick the connective tissue,
Right.
because the connective tissue doesn't have that concept built in. You're talking about like the GTO,
Yeah.
Golgi tendon.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing is, okay, but really from a range of motion standpoint, does the hip really do that? I mean, here's another example that I give. Abduction at the hip, it's about 45 degrees. And you've got bony limitations to that. Now, if I externally rotate, I can get another about 15 degrees. So I can get up to 60. Okay? But 60 and 60 never equals 180. So how do I get there? Well, the way you get there is, and you can use PNF, you can use whatever you got to use, but what has to happen is for this femur and this acetabulum has got to start to come out of the joint. Because if it has a bony hip right here at 60 degrees, it has to come out of the joint. And the hip, we know, is a wonderful ball and socket joint and is so solid, so secure, because it's got such a deep inset. And what we want to do is we want to take that away. I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense. So even with the PNF, even if we can trick it and we can tell the myostatic stretch reflex to just lay low, it's okay. But what about the connective tissue? What about the nervous system? What about the nerves that are running through that? And so again, even that is, we want to maintain our love affair psychologically with the stretching, and we want to just push aside the physiological aspects that really we should be about. We should not be a psychological people, we should be a physiological people. But we're not. And so now we're adding to the problem as opposed to really pulling people back, saying, let's just do this. And the reality is, when you do just do this, you get better results. And, as I was sharing with someone a week or two ago, how much time do you spend before, after practice, and what have you, doing these stretching exercises? 10, 15 minutes? My goodness, how could we be spending that time on what better things that would actually prepare, create greater injury, prevention, longevity? So there's a lot of aspects to that, but one of the keys is, let's focus on training in a more balanced fashion rather than, okay, well, let's try and trick the body so maybe we can do what we really like to do this way, and then maybe I won't have to feel so bad about it. It's kind of, you can see the psychology that's really wrapped up in this. It really is something. And we've got to be able to let that go. But because we are such an emotional people, that can be a difficult thing.
So what do you recommend for runners as far as warming up? That they just want to go out and go for a jog. What do you recommend?
The best thing that that I've found for runners is to simply do a range of motion on a single leg. So do a single leg balance, okay? And I had a lady come to me about 15 years ago. and she was a runner 5 days a week, and I put her on this program, and she still does it to this day. And you do a single leg balance, and then you take the free leg through range of motion. So I'm here, I would be, extending the knee. So what I'm going to do here, I'm training the quad, I'm lengthening the hamstring, okay? And then from here I push back, and I go into a extension. And then I would do a knee flexion from here, okay? So two things are happening now. I'm strengthening my balance capabilities with my one leg, and I am actively warming up this leg for activity. Then from here, I would do some abduction, and then I come across the body, some adduction, come across the body, adduction posteriorly, so I'm getting some glute, which we want to make sure is warmed up before we begin the run. So just something as simple as this, we can do some rotation. We can come here, we can work the deep rotators, do an internal, external rotation, okay? I've had them do, like half circles, just getting some flexion and extension mixed in with AD and abduction. Right there, I'm feeling right now a burn in this leg from having to stand so long. And think about all the motions that I've just taken this leg through. And so then, of course, you'd switch. And so then we would go here. And I guarantee if you were to run through that, it's going to take 2-3 minutes. And then you begin to run, you're going to feel so ready, warmed up. I mean, truly warmed up, not what we call warmed up. You know what I'm saying? Just something because it's active. You're really moving, and you're creating blood flow. It's one of the problems with stretching too. Is it really isn't doing anything for blood flow. So the warming up concept really isn't there. Which is why they've tried to do well, let's warm up first and then we'll stretch. Still all psychological.
So what about, I get this question a lot, if I shouldn't stretch, what do I do for my back pain? A lot of people with the low back pain, they say, well, so-and-so told me I need to stretch this out to try to relax the back muscles. How do we alleviate the low back pain?
Well, that's another big topic, because what we're really getting into there is proper core training. Typically, the core training has not been there, or has been improper. Because what we're talking about with back pain is we're talking about 80% of the time we're talking about a problem with the hip flexors. In other words, the hip flexors are too tight. So the hip flexors are too tight, so I end up taking on this type of a position. Okay? And then if I walk or run and I'm in a hip flex position because the iliopsoas is so tight, what am I doing with every step? Making it tighter. I mean, you see that? I've got to get to here so that I can actually get into some extension. But if I'm here with the tight hip flexor, I'm never even going to come close to back here. So no extension is ever going to occur to where this could actually open up. So the movement that Adam just did here, prone, would be phenomenal for the low back pain to extend at the hip, flex at the knee, and open up the quad and the hip flexor. And what you're doing there is you're really training the glute. You're kicking in the glute to get some stimulation. Because too often, especially if we have back pain and we're in that slight hip flex position, hyperlordotic curve, you're never getting to an extended position. You're never getting to the place to where now reciprocally inhibit the iliopsoas muscle. And that will go great lengths to alleviating a lot of the back pain. But the problem is we're exercising and we're reinforcing the very problem. We're making it even worse with our exercise because we don't have the proper core strength and we don't have the range of motion in terms of what really is needed to alleviate the problems that are there.
So most good trainers at least know that static stretching before a workout or core activity is terrible. And so what is your view on dynamic stretching? So, kind of what you're doing to move to get warmed up, doing stuff like, like arm circles, or trunk twists, Frankenstein, whatever you call them, that kind of stuff.
The key too is making sure that the movements are controlled. You want to be, real cautious because, ballistically, I could still get myself into some ranges that really aren't the best. Because the whole key